Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our talk on Australian sustainability reporting standards, specifically Group 2 and Group 3. But if you are in Group 1, definitely get in contact with us to make sure that you are in compliance and get your reporting done if you haven't already done it. We're continuing on from our talk from the previous day about Group 1 and Group 2. And today we're going to go through the detailed framework of how to walk through and get the most out of your ESG and SARS reporting investment. So, welcome, Meryl. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're going to jump right into it. So, actually, before we start, why don't you give us a little bit of background on Subscintus and what makes Subscintus one of the top ESG and sustainability reporting and consulting companies, not just in Australia, but around the world?
Thanks for having me, Dan. Appreciate it. I think, to put it simply, we go beyond the reporting and we actually become an implementation partner for our clients. So we want to take what is written on a piece of paper or made in terms of a verbal commitment and put it into an actionable pathway. We want to mobilize that change and really create that shift within an organization. And that's actually what Subscinctus stands for. It means is shift in Latin, because we're trying to shift not only the governance structure and then initial thinking, but actually then how people and business systems act and how they actually leverage and value and create value within those changes through sustainable pathways. So that's where we come in.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And for those listeners that don't know much about Green Parrot, Green Parrot is an international rating agency for sustainability and sustainable goods and services. So we provide tailored programs for your narratives to get that information out to buyers and consumers about the programs and protocols that you do. We are a transparent B2B to B to C reporting tool set. We do compliance as a competitive advantage. So we really try to change that mindset and that ability to move from just a cost center to potentially a profit center, utilizing your ESG and sustainability assets in a competitive market space as a lever. We are data-driven AI organizations, so we really try to push that information out that we can help you with increased sales and premium for your sustainable goods and services. So if you want to get in touch with Meryl or myself, please do so. So now we'll go ahead and jump into our execution path. So previously we talked a little bit about the overarching execution and Meryl, why don't you give us a high level again, and then we'll jump into some of the main phases.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So this pathway that's been defined here, I think let's relate it to ASRS. That's what we're here to talk about, right? So, the first thing that
Yes.
businesses absolutely need to do is do an initial materiality and analysis. And so when we do this in alignment with the ASRS pillars, we're talking about looking at, your governance and the way that you're operating your business, and then seeing how management is considering their current climate related risks and the opportunities, which is the CRROs. And if you're looking at your CRROs carefully, then you're able to connect your current processes within management to actual strategies for implementing climate diligence, or looking at reducing your climate risk essentially. And so then that'll start to, once you've mapped out those risks and all those impact areas that lead to risk, then you can start to connect it through to your risk processes and actually manage financial impacts. And this is where you start to align through your strategy, and you start to say, well, strategically, this is where we want to focus. We've identified the CROs. These are what impact us in the short term, the medium term, the long term. And this is the financial potential of it as well. And here is where ASRS then gets you to also look at your scenario analysis. And if you sort of don't know what that is, that's actually looking at testing your business resilience under different climate change pathways. So whether it's a 1.5 degrees of warming, which is unfortunately quite close and imminent, we feel, or, a 2 degree of
Yeah.
warming or a 2.5 degree of warming. And so that's where you're starting to measure how will your business withstand those sorts of changes. And then looking at the risk management processes. So then how are you actually measuring the data or capturing the data in the first place? Are you capturing the right data? That's probably first and most important. Then What is
Yeah.
that data? How are you capturing it? How are you continuously feeding it back into the system so you're actually continuously improving essentially and changing the strategy? This is where that risk management process comes to fruition through that initial CRRO identification that you did at the beginning. Now you're actually starting to take that and turn it into something that is valuable within the business. And you're essentially using those metrics and those targets within your organization to not only just measure, your reportable metric, whether that's, greenhouse gases, climate related risks and so on, but you're actually feeding that back into individuals and their roles or business units and their roles and how you can improve business and actually create economic value within the organization.
I think that's extremely important that this whole process and the framework isn't just about trying to segregate a climate related or sustainability related protocols, but actually embedded into our normal SOPs. So our normal standing operating procedures, because it needs to start to become a normal operating for our organizations, and that it's just part of how we do business and how we actually run the organization. So we have broken out into a little bit of like a game plan. So there are 10 phases that we've put together, but we've also kind of outlined the time frames based off of when we actually need to do reporting for group 2 and group 3 specifically. I mean, group 1, if you haven't done your reporting already, then definitely again get in contact with us so we can help you to get through that, because it should have been already done already. But if we look at this, we wanted to make sure that we put it in such a way that actually it runs over multiple years so that you're not caught at the very end. Now, we are in the last, well, as of tomorrow anyway, April 1st, or tomorrow, April 1st, we're in the last quarter of FY26. And so FY26 financial year, you have to do reporting for group 2, and that's due by the end of the calendar year. So December 31st. So if you haven't started already, that's okay. We can certainly help you. But these are the 10 phases we see. And if you're in group 3, you should be started already as well. And we can certainly help you through those. It's not overwhelming in such a short space of time. So really, it is like Meryl said, starting out with the foundation, figuring out what your materiality assessment is, what your governance setup should be for your corporate governance, what your baseline is for your scope 1 and scope 2, then your gap analysis, and then start to build your scenarios. Again, Meryl talked about 1.5 to 2 to even potentially 3 degrees of change in scenario analysis and how that actually impacts your business. We do already have models for that. So yes, we can help you with those to streamline and accelerate your reporting requirements and scenario builds. Again, for group 2 and group 3, you are required to do scope 3 scoping. So that is quite critical as well to get those assumptions correct. So those should be already close to being completed if you're on our timeline. But again, if you're not, that's okay. We can start to help you. Systems upgrades. There's a lot of software out there. I come from a software background, data management background. So I've seen lots of ESG platforms and upgrades to different ERPs. So we want to make sure that you're selecting something that's worthwhile, that's going to give you value and not just a cost and a burden. Then it's the assurance prep, making sure that you have pre-audit controls, that everything is validated and is going to be defensible if you ever get questioned by the governing regulatory bodies. Draft the report should already starting to be drafting that report, believe it or not. If you're group 2, and then by the end of the year, financial year, should be signed off by the board. So you do have a few months to actually reiterate or iterate that report and make sure that it's ready to file by the year end. Any comments about that, Meryl?
Yeah.
Any special gotchas?
Well, you've covered the process really well. The 10-phase framework covers all the steps that businesses need. And I think something to add here as to why this becomes really important is you could go ahead and just, take all these steps and do the report. And if you don't pick, say, the right consulting partner or advisory partner, whoever it is, implementation partner is what I think you really need, because this is not just about doing the report. It's about not only doing it really well, but also ensuring that then you have the systems in place, whether that's data related systems, people related systems, physical asset related systems that are actually going to then operationalize that report. Because doing a report at a baseline is not good enough. One, because this becomes public now. So businesses, other businesses, your competitors, your clients, your customers, the community, your potential investment stakeholders, or even financial stakeholders, financiers, and so on, they're going to see this. This is all out in the public now. So having a really solid report is extremely important. But two, how do you operationalize that report? And this is where I think it goes beyond just having a reporting partner or an advisor or a consultant, but someone who can actually then operationalize this change within your organization in a way that is defensible. That is key
That's
word
right.
here.
Absolutely. And that it is actually a systemized approach, right? So, like you said, people, processes, technology, and procedures. So, it is part of your business because this isn't a once off. It's only going to get more complex as we continue to grow and mature in climate related capabilities. So if you've already got it and if you do embed it into your normal operating processes, then it becomes much easier the following years as well, because it'll continue to be an annual, if not quarterly, type of reporting requirement. So, yeah. So now if we move away from what the framework actually is, but where you could be exposed and what each kind of role needs to do, what are some of the high level that the board needs to think about as well,
Yeah,
Meryl?
sure. I mean, it's a really solid question, and probably the answer is a little bit complex because boards need to be thinking about their exposure across so many different areas. So, of course, the initial one is your governance
Mm,
framework and the way that you make decisions within your organization. How do you allocate funding within a business? Who takes responsibility for what part in terms of your decision making processes? And that just is at a governance level, and that doesn't even really cover sort of everything that businesses need to be thinking about. Then we've got to think about, how are we drawing out energy and using that energy, whether that's gas, electricity, what avenues is it coming from? Is it a renewable source that's being shipped across from another country, and what risk impact does that have on us? What climate impacts does that have on us? And that also sort of very quickly exposes what sort of social and human related impacts that also has on our business operations. So that's just from looking at energy. Then, of course, resources as well. Similar idea is, where are you drawing out your resources for? What is the risk profile for that pathway of it reaching here in Australia? And how are you considering and managing those risks? So there's so many areas across governance, across energy, across resources, materials, then interactive pathways in terms of how you interact with your community. What are you doing for the community to mitigate those risks? And then, even though ASRS right now is mainly a climate related risk focus, for me, I always find this a really interesting topic of conversation where we're trying to create a very clear boundary around something that doesn't really have a boundary. It will have interactive and, let's say, some indirect and direct effects on other areas like biodiversity, natural capital, so on,
mm.
social and modern slavery related issues. So this is where businesses, and especially the directors within an organization, the executive team, need to have very clear pathways of accountability around their climate risk, because there is so many direct and indirect measurables that they need to consider around this. And without doing that initial materiality analysis and impact mapping, then they have really no idea how their business has a direct impact on these operational and supply chain areas.
Absolutely. And again, it has to start at the top, like you suggested as well, from the board. Each executive has specific responsibilities and areas, and we've gone through a little bit in the background of some of those because we just don't have time to go through all of the detail of each one of those. But certainly the board, the CEO, the CFO, or risk management, as well as the sustainability officer what can those or not just the sustainability officer, but the sustainability lead, who especially in the group 3 area, you might not actually have a designated sustainability officer, but a role that's been applied to somebody. So, what those immediate actions can be taken? What are some of the ongoing responsibilities that they need to think about? And certainly some areas that they need to watch for. We go through this so that people can understand where their obligations are and what the requirements need to be. And we've also kind of outlined what kind of cost estimates for group 2 and group 3 are as well. And again, these slides are available if somebody wants us to give them to you to go through them, but to also reach out to us to help. These are guidelines that we've put together about portions of the main phases and what those might cost. So whether it's the first year, which is pretty much trying to set up all your models, making sure that your scenarios are built in a way that can be reusable, make sure that you've got systems that are integrated or bringing in some of that data so that you can do the reporting properly, and then also ongoing estimates as well. So it's again, what we've talked about is it's not just about a once off, it's not just about the report, but it is about ongoing enablement within the organization and how to adapt for additional protocols, and those protocols being everyday life. So it's one of those things that we are moving towards, and it's good to
Mhm.
do that because we all have responsibilities and for the environment and the social impact, as well as making sure that it's governed.
I think something to also add here is I know that businesses are not very much used to having to allocate, let's say, eco funding, if you want to use a simplistic term, or ESG funding aside for these sorts of things within their business. But they need to get used to it because this is now here, it's here to stay, and it's directly related to your financial reporting. But a positive from this as well is to recognize that there is a lot of value to be created within your business. Imagine a business that has been de-risked,
Yes.
that has been made more resilient, essentially, in the face of so many changes. That even say changes around, say, what's happening in the world right now, where oil pathways for many countries are being disrupted. And so
And
things like this, when you take action and follow a pathway that ASRS has given us, then you can start to create more, I guess, resilience within your business and de-risk these sorts of things from affecting your business directly because you've got a pathway of acting towards these sorts of changes and knowing where to pivot and when to pivot. And so I think this is a really important thing for all the upcoming disruptions we're likely to face, whether climate related or not.
that's exactly right. I think it's such a good thing because it is a framework to look at your organization for optimization, for efficiencies, and it's not necessarily just about climate or greenhouse emissions, but also the sustainability of your organization and the likelihood of disruption of supply chains, whether they are emissions related or not. I mean, it could be that you've identified as a particular supplier that you're relying on that isn't actually capable of continuing on. And so that actually enables you to look at alternatives and to be able to be ready for that impact. And I think that's extremely important. As well as, yes, it's part of your budgets now. It has to be part of your budgets. It's not like this separate thing. It needs to be embedded in everything that you do. And that's why we're both here as well, is to help you to do that, help you to do that efficiently, but also to make sure that it is an investment, that you can use it as an
Mhm.
asset, that you can get value out of it because people, whether buyers or consumers, and again, non for profits and government agencies are now requiring a sustainability section for all of their service providers, all of their
Mhm.
suppliers. Whether you fit into group 1, group 2, or group 3, you're still required to give that
Mhm.
data. So there's still an uplift of what you can provide as far as sustainability. And certainly consumers out in the market globally are requiring more and more transparent information because they do want to make a choice. They do want to make a sustainable choice. If they can over another product, they
Mhm.
will. And the latest report that I've got from Gartner, 9% of the populace
Mhm.
globally does want and would pay for a premium on sustainable products. Now, Currently, it's around 17% that actually do pay a premium, but that's primarily because they don't have the information to make that
Mhm.
choice. So let us help you, and really appreciate Meryl for joining me on today's talk. And we'll do some updates later in the year as well. But please reach out to Meryl or myself, and we can certainly help you. Meryl, any last final comments for today's talk?
I guess I just wanted to say that people should move away from seeing this as just a reporting requirement and something that is mandatory. Yes, it is right now mandatory in Australia, but let's see it as an opportunity, right, to prepare for a very disruptive economic future and one that right now is absolutely going to get turned on its head. AI has proven that, and so many other things are really proving that. Crypto is has proven that. So let's take this as an opportunity to leverage it into a value creating system. And that's what's we're here to do.
Brilliantly said. Thank you so much, Meryl. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to us for this talk. And by all means, if you have questions about the standards, please don't hesitate to get a hold of us. All right. Thanks, everyone.